Today's speaker is Michael J. McGandy. He's the director of the University of South Carolina Press. Prior to arriving in Columbia in 2022, he was senior editor and editorial director of the Three Hills Regional Trade imprint at Cornell University Press. He has also worked in commercial publishing at Norton Company, Macmillan Reference / Gale Group, and Rowman Littlefield. Let's give a big hand for today's speaker, Michael McGandy.
Wonderful. Hello, and thank you for that rousing bit of applause. Delighted to be here. Want to point out a couple of housekeeping matters, which is that I'm passing around a clipboard that has a sign-up sheet for anyone who wants to be on our mailing list, which will mean you'll get information about book sales, new publications, yes, an occasional request for funding support, which you are obviously not obligated to contribute to, and just some news from the press. Recently, we just had a couple emails that went out that were about our interns program, and it was quite inspiring. So a little something extra in your inbox, but certainly nothing that's going to be coming so fast and furious that you're going to wish that you hadn't done it. Up here, I have our new catalog for the fall season and a couple of bookmarks and my catalog, or excuse me, not my catalog, my card. If people need more of our fall catalog, I have a box out in my car. So in some sense, modeling good authorial behavior, right? If you're an author, jumping way to the end of the process that we're going to begin now, you want a box of books in your car. You want to be the person who's out there. You need to love what you do, and you need to love sharing what you do with other people, and you need to have a box or two or three of your books in your car because you just don't know what's going to happen. I feel the same way about my work at the press. I love what I do. I am a shameless advocate for what we do. And I'd like to think, it's for other people to say, but I like to think that my shamelessness really is on behalf of the authors, right? Authors entrust their time, their energy, their dreams to publishers. You've put in years and years and years into what you care about, and then it's a physical thing, and that physical thing may be paper, it may be digital, but one way or another it is something that is given to other people, and you need someone who's going to be your advocate, and you need to be your own advocate. So that's jumping way to the end, but what I want to do now is maybe take about half an hour to walk through the process, beginning with your life, and then at the end of that, have it opened up to questions. So this is going to be very schematic, very much an overview, a little bit of sort of a branching diagram about choices and self-awareness. And then having done that, everyone in this room, I figure, has something percolating on their laptop, their desktop. There's no question that's too specific, and there's no question, using your own good judgment, too personal, right? Because I'll be speaking in generalities. Generalities are generally true, but are often not applicable to your specific situation and may not be helping you as an individual think about what you need to know about. So we'll have some time and space for that, but also at the end, there will be my email there. My cards are here. The door is open for people to approach me and ask me questions about anything that's going on in your writing life and your publishing experience. I'm not here, having already done what I've done, I'm not here to push the press. I'm here to meet you where you are and talk about what you need. And I would say within this room, there's a, excuse the language, but all the same, damn good chance that there's no one in this room that wants to publish with USC Press, which is perfectly fine. And I would be frightened if everyone in this room wanted to publish with USC Press, because I can't handle you all at one time, right? So that this is really about what you need. But I do think, I think that USC Press, we're part of USC. We are a public good. Your taxpayer money goes into my salary in one way, which more of it did, but more into my salary. We're here to help the citizens of the state and provide information for the citizens of the state. So the door is wide open. You don't have to be pushing something for the press, and you don't have to feel badly about asking a very, very selfish, specific question. So with that preamble, we begin with the first stage of the process is just thinking about what are you doing. Some of you in this room will probably have something that you've already started, so you may or may not have asked some of these questions and answered them, or you may not have asked them at all, but in some explicitly, but in some sense implicitly you have, which is to say, what is this thing? What is the nature of the book project that you have? Where does it fit into your own aspirations, career aspirations, who you want to be? A career doesn't necessarily have to be, a next step up a ladder, but like who are you becoming? And what is this project? How does it fit into it? And also, where does it fit into your life? I mean, a book project can be all-consuming. It can require massive amounts of travel and research. It can require time away from home. It can cost a lot of money to get things done. I can almost assure you, unless there's some crazy outlier in this room, and obviously outliers happen, you'll never recoup the costs of time, energy, and money that you put into the project. So think about your life and the project holistically, right? Does this make you happy? Does this contribute to your life in some larger way? Because if you break it out again in a very sort of dollars and cents way, publishing in general and authors in specific, they're just crazy because it makes no sense, right? But it's something you need to do. But if you need to do it, what's the bigger picture? Because if you don't have a bigger picture, when you're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years into it, you might really hate yourself, or you might really regret it, or you may despair over something that you've gotten this far, and moments of despair will come and go. I mean, you get a clear notion at the beginning. Doesn't mean despair is not going to come at some point, but if you don't have a reasonably clear-eyed look at what you're doing, that endurance that you're going to need you'll find yourself lacking more often than you'd like to. So. There are lots of technicalities in publishing, but this is an existential decision that you're making as an author. And I think, thinking about it as an existential decision is a really important thing to do. And then it gets really boring and technical. All right, so you know who you are, you think you know who you are, and then what do, right? So you need to analyze the marketplace, right? I mean, let's suppose you're writing out of passion. But ultimately, you don't want this passion to be just sitting on your desktop or in a drawer. You want to be sharing it with the world. So you need to start looking at what are the factors that go into choosing the press and the publishing opportunities that are available to you, right? So what are the presses that are there, right? What are the presses that might be a good fit, right? That's the last thing. And I'll say fit probably 50 times before I'm done talking in 25 minutes. What presses are a good fit, right? What presses do the kind of work you do and do them well, and you think they do them consistently well. One thing to do is wherever you're writing, supposing you're writing in a room that has some books in it, spin your chair around and look at your shelf. What are the colophones? And the colophon is the little stamp at the bottom of the spine that is the symbolic representation of what that press is. What are the colophones on most of those spines or on many of those spines? That will tell you something about the press that you like, because you consistently buy their books. You read them because they give you subject matter that you care about, and that could be subject matter. I'm sounding maybe a little more nonfiction than maybe this room is, right? But who's publishing the genre? Who's publishing in these subject areas? So think about the presses, right? And think about a press that you'd want to be proud of being a part of. It's important to keep good company as an author, right? You stand on your own, but you also will be in a catalog next to various things. And if you're in a catalog and all the other stuff in the catalog you think is nonsense, that's probably not where you want to be. Because one way or another, people are going to think, it may or may not be nonsense, but in your opinion is, people are going to think you're part of the nonsense, right? So you don't want to be, so you want to be keeping good company. Within presses, there are lists, right? There's some presses, I was saying this at lunch, we're an excellent press, but are we considered the excellent press, like in the United States? I mean, like we're not the most prestigious press, USC Press, right? We're a small press. We do about 35 books a year. We're not Oxford, not Cambridge, we're not Chicago, we're not Princeton, let alone Basic and what have you, right? But in some subject areas, we are a premier press. So there are some presses that really stand out as a whole, but do they also have a very specific focus, right, and things you care about? And there may be moments where you say, well, people may not think highly of this press in general, but this one thing they're doing is really exceptional. And, maybe it overshadows the other things they're doing, but I'm going to make a choice to go for the list, the prestige of the list or the power of that list over the press as a whole. And then there's the editors, right? Once you get a contract, or not even to that point, but once you start working closely with a press to develop your project in some way or another, and I'm going to get to self-publishing in a minute, that's a fork in the road we're coming to, right? But here I'm presuming, some things about traditional publishing. You're going to be spending a lot of time with an editor. Who is this person? Is this person well respected? Is this person giving you what you need? Is this person really experienced but blasé, or I've seen it all before? Or is this person inexperienced but super passionate and loves what you do? It may have zero connections, but this person has all the energy in the world, and that's what you need. Like, who are the editors? Are they giving you what you want? Talk to people who have worked with these people recently to find out the real story, because guess what? Editors lie. Editors lie all the time, right? Because most of what we do, no one sees, and we can do whatever we want, right? And I don't think as a generality we're a bunch of liars, but we have the room, right? There's a curtain that gets closed and things happen and don't happen that people aren't aware of. So talk to people who have worked with them and get a take on it. Do not just talk to one person, because you know who else are liars? Authors. They lie all the time, and if they didn't get what they wanted, they get bitter and they run down people and talk about that. And authors are often unreliable in their account of things. So talk to a few authors about it. Don't just talk to one, right? Because there's always some person. There are many people who hate me. Many people. They're wrong for hating me, but they're out there, and they do because they had a bad experience. And I would fess up to some of them, but I would also say that some of that stuff was because someone else's actions and their unwillingness to recognize the price of their actions. So you need to know about the editors. I've already used the word prestige. I've implied engagement, and now we're moving a little bit into self-publishing or ease. Like, what are the things you need from the press or the publisher? Like, do you just want prestige, or do you want the engaged editor, or do you just want this thing to happen as quickly and easily as possible? On the whole, if you want it to happen as quickly and easily as possible, I think you're moving towards self-publishing, right? You got to deal with yourself, and you have to deal with a big institution, right? But you don't have to deal with another person, really, which is the pro and the con, or one of the pros and cons of self-publishing. If you're going to deal with an editor, things are not going to go nearly as quickly as you want them to, because you're just dealing with people, right? And we know what people are like. They're wonderful. We need them. They're a little crazy. They slow us down. They ask us questions we want to hear. They involve us in bureaucracies we don't want to be involved in. So, where are you in that? What is the thing you need? If you want to go as quickly as possible because you think everything you got is great and you don't need help, you just need the mechanism, you're probably not going to a traditional publisher for sure. If you want prestige, you're probably not going with self-publishing, because self-publishing does not generate prestige. Right. It does a lot of good things, and I am not against self-publishing. I mean, I represent obviously a very traditional publisher. I'm not against it, but these are choices you need to make, and this is why I'm laying things out the way they are. The other thing, going back to the box of books, right? How much are you going to put in, right? Do you just want it done and done? Well, all right. I mean, you're not going to sell any books. And whether that's self-publishing or traditional publishing, like if you just want to get it done and have it out in the world as a testimony to the work you put in, you can achieve that in many different ways, but I'm telling you, you're not really going to sell books. If you're ready to hustle, you're ready to work hard, you need to know how much more gas you've got in the tank, so to speak, when you start thinking about which way you're going to go, right? And going back to, in some sense, where I started, it is a long process. It's a hard process. There are going to be dark nights of the soul. I think if you're going to be an author, you have to have a fair amount of gas in the tank in principle. But when you're starting to think about this, like how much further you want to go, because if you're gonna give yourself a chance to be successful, which does not mean you will be, but if you want to give yourself a chance, once that book is published and you've got the physical thing in your hand, your work has just begun. You're going to have to do a lot of work out there. Even some of the biggest authors at the biggest presses are still hustling and doing their own publicity and all that sort of stuff. And that's just sort of true up and down the publishing industry now. It used to be, like if you were with a big prestige publisher, everything was cool. And if you worked with a rinky-dink publisher like USC Press, then you had to do all the work. I think the level of author engagement is true up and down the whole marketplace now. Because if we send out a press release saying your book is great, no one believes us. We can take out space advertising and like, space advertising, or if it's a space advertising on a website, right? You suppress all your advertising, so you never see it, right? It's word of mouth. It's someone saying, "Yeah, I just met this author and they were fantastic," and what have you. And then this, so it takes that personal touch, and that I think that's for the biggest and the smallest of authors. And then there's fit, right? So we could add probably 5 other things to this sorting and analysis. All of it kind of boils down to some sense of fit, right? Some sense of you're not likely to get everything you want on these bullet points, right? It's going to be some yes, some no, some I don't know. I tried to know, I can't really know. It's undecidable right now. Well, sort of fit, and fit is, there's some objective criteria to fit. Some of it is feeling, right? I mean, and I don't think you should be wary of feeling. I think feeling's meaningful, in part because it's hard to conceptualize or sort of make these things completely clear. There are no metrics. Like there's no book that tells you, this press is 5.5 on this scale, but then 4 here, but 9 there. There's no such thing. And lacking real quantitative data, feelings are important. And again, you're going to have to be spending a lot of time with this institution, this person, with your own decision. Your feelings about it at the start are important. So somehow or another, they all come into this more general category of fit. And then we have the major pathways, right? So you answer those questions and you think, do I want a traditional publisher, right? And I'm just going to give schematic, there are variations, but just quick schematic presentations. Traditional publisher, us, right? We're not the top of anyone's pecking order, but the way we structure how we work with authors is very traditional, which is, proposal, sample materials, talk to an editor, go through review, this and that, revisions, blah, 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 contract. You'll be lucking if you're getting 10% net on royalties. We probably will not ask you for any money up front unless you're doing some fancy schmancy art book that has like 20 color or 50 color plates that's going to cost a lot of money. And then we're going to say, well, can we find some money to help because it's going to be an expensive book to produce and what have you. You will be handled by us we'll do the copy editing, we'll do the page layout, we'll do your book cover for you at no cost to you. You will, if you want proofing's on you. If you, and an index, if your book is suitable, index is suitable for your book, that would be your responsibility either to do or pay for. We handle warehousing. We send it out into the world. We get reviews for you. We make sure you're in print in perpetuity. And, if things go well, you start to get royalty statements, like maybe a nice dinner or 2. If things go well, nothing grand. The grand happens, but don't plan on the grand, because the grand really is quite grand and unusual. But that is the same arrangement if you were publishing with Knopf, you're publishing with us. It's a business relationship. That business relationship is not an index of prestige. It's just the way we do business. You could do that. You can use that model and be terrible. You can use that model and be excellent. It's just how we structure our business. Hybrid is a hybrid, and as best I understand it, I've heard different sorts of things. I would say I don't understand it perfectly, but it has many of the trappings, the structural trappings of a traditional press, excepting they're going to want to have cash from you up front, but then they might give you 50% royalties. So I think a lot of the more traditional arrangements in terms of services and what have you are the same as a traditional publisher, but the cash consideration at the beginning is very different. So these institutions, I would say, are cash poor institutions often case, right? They don't have cash flow, so they're asking authors to provide cash flow. A traditional publisher puts in the investment up front and expects it to come at the back end, if it ever comes. But in any event, it's coming at the back end. And it's going to happen over 10 to 15 to 20 years, right? I mean, there have been studies done about the investment that an average university press puts into the average academic book. So like 248 pages, 100,000 words, 10 images, black and white interior, blah, blah, blah. It's about $25,000. That's counting direct and indirect costs, and indirect costs including keeping the lights on, right? So $25,000 is a lot of money. Most of our academic books are selling somewhere around like 200 in the first year. We are not anytime soon recouping those costs, right? So we put all the investment in. We hope for it to come in on the back end. Obviously, we get money from the university, which is, what distinguishes us from a commercial publisher. The hybrid publisher doesn't have the support to wait on that cash, therefore needs the cash up front. It doesn't mean your experience really should be any different. Again, this is a business decision and how their accounts are handled. It doesn't have to mean that your experience with a hybrid publisher is any different than a traditional publisher, because they should be doing all these other things. It just so happens that they're in a niche where I think they're smaller, they're scrappier, they're cash poor, which could make them marginal in a way that's undesirable, or could make them really scrappy and fun and cool to work with and super energetic. And again, case by case, like traditional publishing is grand. No, sometimes, excuse the language, but it can suck. Hybrid publishing looks a little dicey in certain respects, but I think it can work. But you need to be with the right people, right? Self-publishing, iUniverse. Let's just say iUniverse, right? So, you're doing all the work, right? It's a la carte. You choose what you want in it. You make the choices for yourself. You load all the content in. You'll get pages back. You will proof them. I mean, you're doing everything. You have control, but you have the responsibility. iUniverse will upload your book to Amazon. You'll get an ISBN, you'll have a copyright, you'll have all the instruments to work in the marketplace. The book will be visible to the world. It's not going to go into a single bookstore unless you get it into that bookstore yourself. It's not going to get into second chapter or anything of the sort. I mean, you're going to have to do all that hustling. No one's going to set up an event for you. No one's going to take a space ad for you. No one's going to do any of that for you, right? So you have that responsibility. If you are a hustler and you've got that energy, I mean, I do think that an author is the best salesperson for their book. And in some sense, you're cutting, am I necessarily the best person to sell your book? Sometimes yes, sometimes no, right? But I'm taking, to sound crude, right? I'm taking 90%. You're getting 10%. And I'm not so good at selling your book. You take 100%. You may not be sleeping for a while. You may drive your family crazy, right? But you are the best person to sell your book, and you're getting 100% of the reward for your success in selling your book. I will say, as an objective assessment, that it is hard to find a self-published book that looks as good as a traditionally published book. That you can just see the quality difference. And when you think about what people in bookstores are doing, right, they know the level of quality that just registers with their customers, and you can just see it. And when I go into bookstores and they don't know me and I have the catalog, they think I'm selling my own book. They don't want to talk to me. They want me out of there as quickly as possible. It's like, I'm not selling my own book. I'm a publisher. I'm bringing you other people's books. Like, oh, okay, all right, we can deal with you. There is a fear of the self-published author who's pushing this has been, because there's no gatekeeping, right? Gatekeepers can be terrible, they can be great. Gatekeepers, who knows, right? But everyone, or many people in the world in general, and certainly people in my world, we like to have some sense that some other people have had their eyes on this thing that allow us to feel like we're not wasting our time trying to figure out whether this is quality. It may or may not be a fit, but there's some sense of the quality. When you're a self-published author, no one is vouching for you. That means the person you're talking to has to make every decision for him, her, their self. And most people are just lazy. We don't want to do that. We want someone to tell us upstream that this is worth putting in the time to consider. So if you're a self-published author, right, again, this puts the premium on you as a salesperson. You need to be really effective. You need to be at the table at the Barnes & Noble, and you need to see that look on that person's face, and you need to swallow it and put your hand out, and in 5 minutes, show that person you're legit and your book is worth stocking, because all they want to do is say no and run away. And that's true across the board. Do they also maybe shake my hand with a smile and take my catalog? Yep. Do they always stock my books? Nope. So maybe my relationship with book buyers is more cordial, but it doesn't mean it's always effective, right? So again, trade-offs. And a lot of this you're just not going to know until you do it, but I think you need to think through what may happen and what you've got the stomach for, what you're ready to do. So self-publishing options, I talked a bit about this already. You do need to be talking with people. Self-publishing is not a scam. Lots of people you'll talk to say, it's a scam, watch out. Everyone's out there to take your money. That's not true. There are a lot of reputable self-publishing operations out there. There are also a lot of people who are scammers. And you need to look at that a la carte menu and make sure you're really getting the value, right? Because it's like, oh, it just will cost this. Then it turns out that I exaggerate extremely, hyperbole, but if you want a period at the end of every sentence, you're gonna have to pay $500. Well, okay, come on. So the a la carte breakdown is really important. So the fine print kind of thing that you would have if you were looking at a car, anything of the sort is really important. But talking to people who have done it is the most important thing. People who have gone through it. And again, allowing a little bit for a little buyer's remorse, maybe sometimes a little bitterness, a little fatigue. Try and sort that out or filter that out a little bit. But so definitely be talking to people. Again, assess how much work you're ready to do, because you've got no one's helping you. And if you self-publish, it doesn't mean like I self-publish and that's all I've done, right? I mean, I think these stories are uncommon, but they are still real stories of people self-publishing, hitting the marketplace very effectively. And there are people, not so much at university presses, but at bigger trade publishers, who keep an eye on the independent market and say, that's hot. And I can see some trends that are happening there. And they have it's a service. It's a service. Nielsen that does television also keeps track of book sales. And you can subscribe to the Nielsen service to find out point of sale numbers for any title with an ISBN sold in the United States. So they can say, that looked cool. Why didn't we see that? That's unfortunate. They can plug in Nielsen and find out what your point of sale numbers are in bookstores. It doesn't capture the whole market. It captures around 80%, but we have little metrics, right? It's capturing 80%. Just do some simple math and you get kind of an objective number. And they can say, man, it's already developing itself in the marketplace. Let's buy this. Let's get it. We can probably get it cheap. And it didn't come from an agent, which will save them some money and some time and some trouble. So it definitely doesn't cut you out of the marketplace to get-go. And you can come back into the marketplace of traditional hybrid publishing after publishing first as a self-published author, right? So it's not a one and done. It's not an irrevocable choice. But it is what you're designed to do at the moment, and you're designed to do it with your baby, right? You probably aren't gestating 3 or 4 different book babies at the same time. You've got one, and you're going to feel very special about this, and you're going to want to do the right thing. You're probably not invested in a long game yet, though the long game is always there. So if you go as a self-published author, you're dealing with a business, and mostly you're dealing with a website. You're not dealing with a person, and you're doing all this stuff, and you're cultivating your networks and what have you, and all that, and that's all on you. If you're going to be working with a traditional hybrid publisher, you're going to have to convince someone like me of the value of your work, and then start working with that person. And some phases here, and I'll be very schematic here. You're going to want to be talking to people who have been talking to those editors or publishers, right? So you want to develop a network of conversation partners, people who will give you some inside information, also people who can be reality checks for you, and also people that you can say, hey, you come up to me, here, or you come up to me at the Gula Days festival or what have you. You've got a project. It's like, hey, I was talking with your author and what have you. As soon as you start saying things like that, think, oh, you kind of know the game. You know these people, and you kind of know what I do. And that's just reassuring to me, because we want people who are somewhat familiar with what we do, because it just makes our job easier. We think expectations will be more aligned. I'm not going to tell you something and you're going to hate me or yell at me or what have you. You'll have expected I'm going to tell you something that's disappointing, and you're ready to roll with it. So, developing your network, both for looking way ahead in terms of selling the book, but also developing a base of knowledge and a group of people whose names you can drop at convenient moments to smooth things out, is a good thing. I recommend talking to your editor or your publisher before you send in something. Become a person first. You don't have to. You can say, well, our term of art is it goes over the transom. Something that shows up in the mail or shows up in the email, and I didn't ask for it, I don't know this person, say it came over the transom, which there are transoms in this building, I'm sure, right? The little window at the top of a door to keep airflow going even when the door is closed, comes in over the transom. We look at it, but if it comes to me and we already had a conversation and you showed that you're a person and showed that you're reasonably reasonable and you don't have a tendency to sprout a second head in the course of conversation, then I'm like, okay, I've heard about this. I know about this. This person's pleasant enough. And I look at it a little more carefully, a little more slowly, and it just slows me down in a way that I think behooves an author. And also, if I'm having a bad day, it keeps me from saying no. It's like, because I just can't say no to this person because I know this person. I can't dismiss it out of hand. And at the very least, if it turns out not to be a yes, and you may not want the yes, right? You may hear things from the editor that you like to hear, but if you wanted a yes, even if I can't offer a yes, I'm likely to say, have you talked to this person? Back to networking, right? I become one of your nodes in your network. I'm someone who can help you find the right place for your work, these sorts of things. So talking first is a really good thing. What do you talk about when you talk? Don't sell real hard. Talk. What have you published lately? What do you really appreciate in a book? What drives you crazy an author? How about the weather? I don't know. Try and be a person. Try and talk about what you care about as a whole. And then maybe say, hey, I really enjoyed the conversation. Would it be okay if I sent you a proposal, some sample writing down the line? So when you come in hard and you're selling, flip it around, right? You want to be a person. When you come in hard and selling at me, I don't feel like a person. I feel like I'm the guy at the door. And you're not talking to me. You're treating me like a function in the system, which, of course, I am a function in the system. But I don't want to feel that way, right? I want to feel like you're talking to me. The clammy hand, the just talking for 10 minutes without a break, no one likes that. All right, so slow it down. Have a real conversation. And figure it's not going to be your last conversation. Figure that you're beginning something that is going to be longer term. And again, I'd venture that even if that person you're talking to is not the person who you're going to wind up working with, maybe because they don't think you're a good fit or you don't think they're a good fit, we all hang out together. Everyone in the publishing world, even going up the scale, people who are working in big time New York City publishing, we still all know one another. I mean, I mean, I worked in New York City publishing for a while, so maybe I know a few more people in New York City than other people would. But really, it is a pretty small world. We all move around a fair amount because that's usually how you move up in the career. You don't move up in your own organization. You have to leave your organization to move up. So having a good conversation with someone who turns out to be a dead end for your current project is still something that's basically good for you. And it gives you perspective on whoever you're going to be working with, right? The trade-off. When you have that conversation, you should have something like a book proposal in hand, right? Because God forbid it goes well. Then you're going to have to back it up. And the thing you need to have to back it up at the very least is a proposal, right? And there are books out there, just punch in book proposal, what have you. Go on to Instagram or go onto Blue Sky or go onto Twitter. There are tons of really, really smart people who have great publishing advice, schematic things about doing your proposals, all sorts of things. Drop me a note. I'll send you our proposal guidelines and some schematic written stuff if you want that. There's no lack of information on that. You should have a book proposal, and I would say that you're also well served by having at least one bit of sample writing, because it's a little bit, you can tell, I love my metaphors, right? So this is tennis, right? So it's, you knock the ball into the court of the editor, and the editor knocks it back and says, I'd like to see a proposal. Oh, all right. Then you send the proposal. What a great proposal. Do you have any sample writing? Like, things are feeling good. Like, the game's getting going. You don't at that point want to say, well, I don't have anything to share with you. No, I mean, no, you want to be able to then give someone specific to share. At that point, I think you can put a pause on the game. You say, I'm working on it. I'm being slow. I'm being careful. Don't ever say you're a perfectionist, but say I'm careful and prudent and something. I care about my writing. Don't say you're a perfectionist. I need a little more time. But I think if you can play the game up to that point, you've shown you're legit. The person will have seen enough to know, like, yeah, this chapter is written pretty well. Suggest the rest of it might turn out pretty well as well, right? So those are the things I think you need to have in mind and sort of have with you for both a traditional hybrid publisher, because I really think, and again, this is a case where I'd encourage you to talk to more people, because I think there are probably some people in this room who have better knowledge of hybrid publishing than I do. But I think in some sense, in terms of operations, the hybrids really are working like traditional, accepting at a monetary level. So for most traditional publishers, question mark on hybrid, certainly traditional publishers, there'll be some period where you're kind of under review. Like, you put the proposal in, put a sample chapter in, maybe a whole manuscript. If you're in the fiction world, right, whole manuscript, right, is the thing they're really going to look at. No one wants to read one chapter of a novel, right? You can read one chapter of a nonfiction book and say, well, I mean, there are 10 more chapters and they move through time. And if you handle this period, well, I'm sure the other stuff, so I get it. I can make a judgment based upon that. A novel can go well for 10 pages and then just go to hell. And you need to read the whole thing. So I don't think there's any fiction editor out there who would offer any serious judgment about a work of fiction without reading the whole thing. Now, the person may only read 10 pages and decide it's garbage and not read any more. And that is, of course, what everyone talks about, those first 10 to 50 pages being so critical, right? Absolutely have to be perfect, because if people jump out early, like, done's done. No one's saying, oh, let's see if it picks up at page 150. No one's saying that. So some differences in terms of the material, but somewhere along the line, some things are going to go out to review. For an academic press like us, it'll go out to some version of peer review. It'll go out to 2 experts. They may be scholars, they may not be. They may have fancy letters after them, they may not, but they really know their stuff, and we want their opinion. And it is for us part of our charter that we need to get these outside opinions, because we're not just publishing them to make money. We're publishing things that have enduring value and are shown to be of merit to a body of folks who know. Commercial publishers can be a little quicker and a little more flexible, but usually they're passing it around in-house to their colleagues and people are looking at it. So you have to be ready for review. At that stage, the question of exclusivity comes up, right? I've been talking about one editor. You could be talking to 5 editors at the same time, and that's completely cool. Once an editor decides that he, she, they is going to put in some time and energy, like seriously, into your work, you need to raise your hand and say, I'm really enjoying this conversation. I really like your vision for this project. I really want to go out to review with you or be in serious consideration, but you need to know that I've been talking to X, Y, and Z. The person may just say, cool. It's a free market. I would like to think that most cases I say that because I'm not offering you anything. I didn't offer you a contract. I can't keep you down to just tie you up because I might just tell you no in 2 months. But some pieces will say, I don't want to look at it unless I know that we're the only press looking at it. Then you need to make a choice. And then, you have to evaluate, that press and the other ones that are involved. But you have an obligation to make that known to the editor so the editor can make a reasoned choice as to what they want to do. Transparency. You go out to review. Review takes, as I said, different forms in different ways with different presses. In my world, it's usually single blind, which is to say that the reviewers know who you are, which generally speaking, while it means that objectivity is out the window entirely, it also means that I think the person knows where you're coming from, and it usually helps the author. Like, okay, I looked them up and I see where they're coming from. So that helps me understand what's going on here and helps me read. You don't know who they are, which allows them to be free with their criticism. Does not give them license to be mean. Does not give them authority to demean or anything of the sort. Editors have to gatekeep for that. Most reviewers are kind, generous, wonderful people. Many of them want to be known because they're like, I stand behind this. I'll tell it to their face. This was good in this way. It was bad in that way. But there's some work that's done on the editor's part, just to make sure that the whole process is respectable, constructive, decent, all those sorts of things. And there are occasional reviewers who aren't that, but you can walk out on the street. There are occasional people who aren't that way. So it's just the world. That review process will bring back in reports in one shape or another. You'll be likely, in some sense, the worst possibility is that everyone says, this is just great, publish it as is. There's no piece of writing in the world that's great just as is, right? There's nothing. The last thing you want is a perfectly glowing and completely empty report. You want reports that are challenging. You want reports that the person respects and admires and supports what you're doing and then forces you to become better based upon your own aspirations, not upon their understanding of what the project ought to be, right? Sometimes that happens. It would be, this is great, just write it the way I'd want. Well, no, it's my book. I want to write it this way, but how can I write it better? Right? So the reports will push you, one hopes. You'll have a responsibility to reply to them in some ways. At some presses, that reply will be very formal. And in our world, it is because it has to go to committees, right? Because we're a university press. I think this will be more informal, but the editor wants to know you can work with that criticism and make the work better. Ideally, with the editor, you will have done things early that mimic this. So you have already gone through the push and pull of getting criticism and come out on the other end and feel like you worked well together and making the work better. But this is kind of the last stop before contract. So it's incumbent on the author not to say, yes, whatever you say. I'll just change it. Choose what you think is right. Reject what you think is wrong. When you reject it, when you think it's wrong, you need to have a good reason why. And you need to show that you can engage in that sort of constructive conversation because, with those revisions, maybe the work is ready to go to press. You probably have more work ahead of you. So now you're moving towards a contractual relationship where you're married in a way, and the editor wants to know that you're a decent person to be tied to for a number of different years, and you're not going to throw fits, right? And what you need to know from the editor is that the editor can be strong and forceful and make you be a better writer without insulting you and kicking you around, and particularly that their advice seems to be consistently good, not exclusive, not always good, right? Editors make mistakes, but just that you can have those sorts of constructive conversations. So the review process is getting you to a contract, but potentially more importantly, is showing you the things you need to know about that working relationship with your editor. And again, I think in a hybrid or traditional format, you're doing the same thing. You move to contracts, read your contract. Just please read your contract. Not many authors read their contract. Read your contract. Contracts obviously are legal. They will involve money, and so far as money is relevant. They do lay out some things about process that may not have been made crystal clear to you in other parts of your conversations. It's an opportunity to ask further questions, and contracts can be changed. There are things that we call boilerplate, right? That, we have our contracts, 5 pages of single space type, and then there's probably about half page of all of that that's in bold, and the bolded parts are the things that change. We don't want to change the rest of the stuff that's not bold. It can still be changed if you have a good reason, and there's flexibility within the press to do that. It's in our interest, any press's interest, to keep the contract as uniform as possible, keep it consistent, and of course make sure it's in our favor in most ways. And the standard contract will almost always be in the press's favor, which might underline where hybrid publishing comes in here a little bit. You can push back. And if you do so in a conversational, respectful way, why not, right? It is a contract. And you are going to be giving over your intellectual property in perpetuity. And maybe you can have me all back sometime and talk about contracts, because how do you work on your contract to make sure that you're not stuck forever? But the contract is another opportunity for conversation, for understanding, for making sure you're in a cooperative relationship. And again, it's your intellectual property. You want to be taking care of it. And if in the off chance that things go exceedingly well, this isn't going to be a legacy for your family, right? So, there's also that obligation. If things go really well, whatever's happening with this book and the future of the book, could be something you pass down to the rest of your family, right? Maybe there's a Hemingway in here, right? Maybe there's someone who has those kind of literary legs that you're talking about real money over time, in which case you really do want to make sure that contract's right. Compare it to, the sort of musical contracts that a lot of the performers did in the late 50s, right? They sold away millions and millions of dollars because they were forced to sign quick contracts, and those contracts gave them nothing into the future. So look at that contract. This is a little bit of a summary of a lot of things that have been just through the conversation, right? What are the things that you want? What are the things that you're going to be expected to do? This is after the book is out in the world and you're sharing it with everyone. You need to come with energy. The publisher needs to come with energy. A prestigious publisher who's completely lazy, maybe Prestige does enough. The editor and the publicist at the press who are full of energy and just love it and are going to say, we've got a very small catalog, so it's not crazy to think that you're in the front of our catalog, right? You may have wanted to publish with Knopf, sorry, but you would have been in the back of their catalog. You're in the front of our catalog. When it's opened up and I'm showing it to someone, when I go after this, I'm going to go over to second chapter, and I'm saying, here's our fall list. That the first page is the first book they see. They may not turn the page, all right? But that, you will be seen, and everyone in the business knows that the order in which the books are presented in the catalog is the order of importance in the marketability, terrible word, of the books, right? So you can go small and have all the energy and be number one. Maybe that's the way, right? But I think you want to have this sense of energy. You want to bring energy to it, and you want to feel understood. You want to feel like you've got the best chance in the marketplace. And, the one thing that I feel like one of the reasons why I came to University of South Carolina Press, and I know this sounds just like fluff, but I felt like I wasn't able to give my authors the best chance when I was at Cornell. And that was for structural reasons that I wasn't able to. Failure is always an option, but when you fail because you didn't feel like you gave it your best shot, That sucks. You want to be somewhere where you feel like you gave it your best shot. You can still fail, and that's okay. There are massive numbers of books out there, and people talk about attention spans and the digital economy. And I mean, it is tough to get traction out there and get people's attention. But if you put all the effort into it that you have, and you feel like you don't have the means to succeed, not the promise, but the means, that's just galling. And your responsibility as an author is to do the best you can to discern where you're going to find those best means. And I think I went a little long, but questions, things that are on your minds, and again, knowing that this is not one and done, you get my card and we can talk at any time. Well, I thank everyone for attention, time, good questions. Do not hesitate to follow up. The door's open. And I need to sell books, but I also need people out there in the world who just love writing. And you all are in that group, so I want to support y'all. Thank you.